Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost. It's happy December 1st, everyone. We might as well celebrate whatever we want to celebrate these days. Um, December 1st, yay. So this is the true community gathering. We've been doing this. This is the 183rd consecutive week, I believe, since April 17th, 2020. We started these as a community service because people were freaking out about quarantine and shutdown and isolation and all those things that we just have been through now. And we talked about different ways of creating during a quarantine, and we looked at a lot of different aspects of storytelling other than live performance. So here we are, 3.5 years later, and COVID is no longer the threat it was at one time. We're no longer in quarantine. We're no longer forced to stay at home and figure out what to do with ourselves at home. So we're talking more about the normal theater experience these days. Although the normal theater experience still isn't quite normal. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Theater, though we have live performance, it's not what it was before the shutdown, and it's still healing. We're all still healing. We've been through a pretty extensive trauma. So of course we're healing, and we should allow ourselves the freedom and the understanding and compassion to heal at our own pace. I've had COVID 4 times, so
Wow.
we won't even go into that. But COVID's still here. So again, I say this every week, be conscious of other people, be considerate. And today we're going to talk about something that has happened in the post-pandemic world. Once people were like finally out of isolation and finally able to go back to business as usual, we came up against a big obstacle, which was the writer's strike and the actor's strike. We'll talk a little bit today about what was requested and why the strike happened, and what the ramifications are of the settlement. And I'm going to bring into the room my friend Dauna Williams, who is an attorney. Let's see. And Dauna, welcome to True.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Bob, just to give a little background, my name is Dauna Williams. I am an attorney, been practicing law for quite a while. My area of expertise falls into 3 categories of intellectual property, technology, and entertainment. I also do other areas of practice, such as securities regulations, and I teach in that area. But my real bread and butter are the 3 areas I mentioned. I've been practicing as an intellectual property, technology, and entertainment lawyer for well over 30 years. Well before entertainment, technology actually was really a thing from a legal perspective. I was there from the beginning for my career. Let me put it to you that way. I'm quite certain there are folks who've been practicing longer than 30 plus years who would say that it existed before then, but it really got its traction in the 90s, in particular, late 80s, 90s. So with that said, I have spent a career explaining technology and explaining technology to those around me, both from a legal and also non-legal, like clients and things of the like, basis. And then also I have spent a significant portion of my career watching technology impact legal concerns. Right. And when I say watching it, I mean watching legal precedent grow and be molded by technological advancements. So for today, I hope you don't mind, but I really am going to focus on juxtaposing two things, namely technology and the writer's strike and the actor strike. To be able to show how artificial intelligence in particular played a very interesting role in those two strikes, and why those two strikes were important from that vantage point.
Well, that's exactly what I was hoping we'd talk about.
Okay,
So,
okay, good,
so
because
that's good.
I don't want to be seen as the person who's going to also explain the strikes themselves, because that actually we don't have enough time for.
Well, let's talk about what I can't help but wonder why, coming out of something like 4 years, two and a half years of quarantine, why these issues suddenly became so apparent to people. I think it was probably, I mean, I know this is anecdotal, this isn't legal, but I suppose that it's because people were having so much time to sit at home and think about things. That's one of the reasons why we have so many cultural shifts that are happening in our country right now.
Yes.
What do you think?
Absolutely. I think that the quarantine and COVID and the like were definite catalysts for the direction we're going in right now. And primarily because the fact that we became much more reliant upon our devices for entertainment. We couldn't go to movie theaters. Television we could watch, but at the same time, it was more difficult to generate what we would consider to be traditional television, like sitcoms and things of that sort. The only type of television that actually was easy to create or easier to create was live TV and reality TV, such as things such as the news, by way of example. Sports, well, sports not really, because of the fact that during COVID that also got shut down. But things that were allowed to be done in quarantine, such, like I said, the news, and also streaming just took off because of the fact that it was a quarantine activity. The Netflixes of the world were relying on basically their catalog of entertainment that they had stored, and also the fact that if you're looking at streaming from the individual perspective, people sitting at home could easily create tons of content for places such as TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and that took precedent over what the traditional forms of entertainment, such as movies and things of that sort.
Well, so the amazing thing about this whole thing is just how profoundly we were affected by COVID. Being a very spiritual person, I can't help but think that God sent us to our rooms to think about things and to think about the world, what was going on in the world. We came out with many uncomfortable realizations. We watched George Floyd, and we watched other things in a way that we were never able to see them as clearly as we were seeing them then and now. And you're right, the entire industry changed because of COVID. Suddenly there was no live theater. Suddenly there were no movies. And so you're right, it just was a burst of energy for this streaming industry. It's not an industry, it's part of an industry, but for streaming. So yeah, I think that we can definitely draw a line clearly from quarantine to a shift in the entertainment industry. So that led to what you're basically saying. That led to artists realizing that things were not going to be the same as they were before, and things had to change. We had Scott Sickles, who's a playwright, talk to us last week. He mentioned the fact that the way that it was, that there's something about, you probably know more about this than I do, or maybe I hope you do. Writers, the way writers were handled in the studio system now is being changed because I try to recreate what he said to us. The writers in the room for TV and for things suddenly were being pushed out. They no longer were able to get credit for a full season. They would write one show and then they would be deprived of a living for the rest of the season. So the industry started squeezing their talent, ostensibly because things were so financially difficult that they had to find ways of saving money. But I don't think that ever quite played well in the long run. I think that's basically was disputed, and that's one of the reasons why the strikes took so long. I think there's a lot of poor me at the studios, and it's like, poor you, how about poor me? The artists, on the artist side.
Yeah, no, I think that when switching over to a streaming format, there were different synergies or efficiencies. I'm gonna put efficiencies in quotes, really, but were created that allowed for the streaming platforms, and it was intentionally done, of course, to create basically new business models around how writers, actors were hired, how they were used basically in the day-to-day activity. There was an emphasis on more junior writers doing more, who were more inexpensive labor. There was, as you pointed out, there's a lessening of the number of people in the room to begin with. The seasons were made in a shorter fashion. And so basically, when the streamer started producing content, as opposed to just, because at one point Netflix, all they did was just send us in the mail, already pre-made content that they had licensed from elsewhere, right? So and then when they switched over to a producer model where they were actually producing content, and that's true for Amazon, Apple, all of them, they worked hard to find ways to not adhere to the traditional model of how actors and writers interacted with the studios, lessening as much as possible, pushing seniority aside, creating content that actually didn't require as much from a labor perspective, so that for all of these reasons, you were getting an upset in how product was created. And that upset was creating less opportunities for actors and for writers to make money. I actually have some
slides.
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah,
let me. We don't have to.
It just no. I'm going to make you a co-host so you can do that. But I just want to answer Amy Stoller. She's disagreeing with me about the saying that due to the shutdown. I used a royal we. I said we were able to see things in a way that we weren't able to see them before, and she's rightfully saying that there were plenty of people who saw what was going on before. What I'm saying now is that there were fewer people that could turn away from it. Well, actually, you would think there were fewer people that could turn away from it, but ultimately we found that our country, there's a part of our country that has decided that anything that makes them uncomfortable didn't happen. So Amy, I'm not disagreeing with you. I didn't mean to say anything that would have offended you. I know that there were many people that were very conscious prior to COVID, but COVID still was for a lot of people, it really was an eye opener. It was a time. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. No, I actually think you're both right, and I think it depends upon the vantage point. If you're talking about live theater didn't get hit until COVID, right? And then all of a sudden, live theater, especially from the writer's perspective, the actor's perspective, everybody's sitting at home not doing anything, right? Whereas when the streamers started producing, that happened earlier, right? And so for those who were actually part of the television and film world, they actually started feeling these pressures earlier than the theater world did. because live theater doesn't compete with AI the way at all, really, the way that
It's planning to.
it's planning to. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I tried my darndest to actually, and maybe I'll be able to still get it off the ground, but I actually did a piece that actually involved tons of AI associated with it that was live theater at the same time. About 5-6 years ago, 2015, 16 is when I did an equity reading and everything in 2015 for it, called Bam Bam 360.
I remember that. I remember you talking about that.
Yeah. So I am, but it's it may have been before its time, but you never know. You
Well,
never know.
to try to continue the thread that started with Amy's comment, there were a lot of things, a lot of cultural phenomena that were with us certainly before COVID, and there were some people that were perfectly conscious and aware and dealing with things and understanding things in a way that they needed to be understood, but change was still not happening. So what happened during COVID, at least in terms of diversity and inclusion and Black Lives Matter, we actually had a phrase for it. We had Black Lives Matter. We had a movement that suddenly happened, and I have to say that it did seem for a while like genuine change was inevitable. And I have to say that just like time has done over and over again with us, things have lost their urgency, and I don't think they can afford to. I think we have to maintain the urgency. So I thought, yes, okay, I'd like to say that I thought that the quarantine and I thought that COVID had some positive outcome and some positive result. Maybe we're still waiting for it. I know it seemed to be moving faster. Many things seem to be moving faster while we were in shutdown, and we still don't have the results that we were hoping for.
It's gonna take another election to see what happens, really,
Yeah.
quite frankly.
Well, because the other thing COVID did is it basically forced a whole swath of our country into a position, digging their heels into the ground, saying, no, this is not the way I want it to be. I don't want the world to happen the way you want it to happen. And we are at a country that was built on opposing points of view. So I don't know. Nothing should be surprising us, but my God, I long for common ground. I guess that's all I can say. I really long for common ground.
Yeah, that would be nice. It would be nice. It will be interesting to see whose common ground is going to manifest. That's the other issue.
Yeah. I mean, to basically turn the issue back to the strike and to the issues of the strike. They're basically they were social issues as well in a way. I think I don't want to put words in your mouth. The studio system been as fair as it could be to artists, to writers, and to actors over the years? Was that a seed that was already planted, or is it just a new awareness that is creating people, that is forcing people to actually protest and try to create change? And in fact, create change. I mean, the strike resulted in change. The strikes.
Well, the strikes did result in change, and interesting change, actually. We can get to that in a minute, but I would say that I think the answer is yes. I mean, resoundingly yes, and in the sense that everything's on its own, kind of marching at its own rhythm, and that kind of thing. But quite frankly, when it comes to protecting actors and writers, the studios had one methodology for doing it, and the streaming producers had another. And one can argue, I know a number of my friends who are not traditional storytellers, who actually got deals from the streamers. They could never have found an audience with the traditional TV and film studios, right? So the fact that they were getting paid perhaps not in the same manner, maybe it would have been more robust at a TV or a traditional studio, but they would have never gotten a deal. But now they're getting a deal and they're like, I'll take it. You know, it's less money. But at the same time, the flip side of it is that the streaming platforms have actually gotten to a point where they're better sometimes at marketing their content than the traditional platforms are. And so because they understand digital marketing, you know, they embrace it, they don't shy away from it, things of that sort. Now I think, you know, it's, so one could argue that there are pros and cons, you know, but the reality is that what was happening was that AI was starting to erode even those rights, and the studios and the traditional studios and the streamers were taking advantage of that, and which would have been not positive if not stopped. And so, and now you have it, you know, go on strike and come out of it with stronger boundaries.
And the other thing that's interesting in a basically historical context is it wasn't just the actors and it wasn't just the writers, it was the auto workers. There were like 3 other strikes that all coming out of COVID. So again, I go back to my premise, hypotheses that having time to think about things, it just engendered a lot of frustration in people. They're going, wait a second, I've been putting up with this for so many years, enough. So Teresa, did you want to add something? Oh, okay. I got you. So do you feel comfortable talking about what the basic requests were from the actors and from the writers, what they were fighting for?
Yes, I actually, can I share some slides at this point? Do you think it's okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Get me to shut up. Yes.
No. It's just that the thing about artificial intelligence is that it's a little bit to get our heads around. We keep hearing AI, but what does it really mean? And how is it really eroding the rights of actors and of writers, right? And so what I've done is put together just some simple slides just to kind of walk us through that, so that when I answer, so that we can all answer the question a little more with a little more confidence, if that's okay with you.
That's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right, hang on one second. All right. It's also, I think it's the professor in me. Oh, Lord. You have to forgive this. I don't know what's going on here. I'm all over the place here. Just bear with me one second.
Yep, we got it. It's fine.
All right, and slideshow, play from start. Okay, here we go. So, all right, so just basic vocabulary. So artificial intelligence really is just a simulation of human intelligence by a machine. Another way to think about it is that it's machine intelligence as opposed to human or animal intelligence. So that's this AI by itself, the generic AI. Okay, it was invented in the mid-1950s by a woman. Just want to throw that out there. The pre-gen AI, because we're going to talk about what's the difference between AI and generative AI in a minute, but the pre-gen AI examples, modern ones, would be search engines, Google Bard, speech interpretation like Siri, Alexa, recommendation tools like Netflix and Spotify, directional tools like Google and Apple Maps, social networking tools like TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, etc. Right. And because just FYI, the generative AI was first released to the public through ChatGPT in a big way a year ago yesterday. Just a little tidbit
Oh,
there.
happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, exactly. I should have had it on the slides. But anyway, so but with all that said, all of these things that I put above, like Google, Bard, Siri, etc., they all collect user information. So whenever it does something for you, it feels like it's free, oftentimes, except for like Netflix and Spotify. But regardless of whether it's free or not, we are contributing all of this data about ourselves to what are called data lakes. Okay.
Which is also has to do with shopping. When basically it collects our likes and our dislikes. How many of us get pop-up windows that are eerily close to? But how do you know this about me? Why are you sending me that?
Exactly. It is creepy too, isn't it? I mean, it's
very
like,
creepy.
and it's creepy, it's annoying, it's all of the above, right? And the thing about some of this intelligence is it's also wrong. Like, for instance, my apartment's in the back of my building, which sits my building takes up an entire block or half a block. And so whenever anybody's delivering to me, the apps are always overriding my actual address with the one that doesn't even have an entrance. So it's just kind of like the physical address versus the actual address. So it's just like it's not necessarily intelligent. But anyway, so that's what
it's just like human know-it-alls who don't really know it all.
Don't know it all, exactly. So but like I said, the easiest way to think about it is it's a machine being intelligent versus a human or an animal. Okay. And those data lakes come in are important later. So
he's adorable.
Isn't he cute? So speaking of intelligence, I actually licensed him from Adobe Stock, and I just upgraded my PowerPoint software, and it went into my computer and found him and pulled him up as a suggestion for this slide. And I was freaked out. I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is like Dan reading, like I didn't realize that by saying, yeah, I wanted it to be updated, that this is exactly what was going to happen. So he's an example of how this technology is just getting more and more aggressive. So anyway, but now a subset of AI is something called machine learning. And basically it just means that a machine is trying to imitate the intelligence of human behavior. And it also has the ability to improve its intelligence automatically. All right, so it's a narrow subset of artificial intelligence. It is and where artificial intelligence is just trying to just kind of do kind of one-trick ponies. This has now gotten a little more sophisticated in its ability to imitate human behavior.
Can you actually say how algorithms fit into all this?
Algorithms fit all the way back here. So all of this is run by algorithms, right? That basically are just mathematical equations that simple ones and complex ones. But basically, if you think of them having x's and y's that get repeatedly replace the x and y with actual input from us, and every single time that algorithm is run, it allows for you to do things like search, or it allows for it to interpret your speech patterns, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this stuff is run by algorithms. Algorithms become more sophisticated and start to work together to create that sophistication and layering and the like at the machine learning level. It's not to say they're not sophisticated at the general AI level. They definitely are, but they become more compact and complex at the ML level. And also the other thing about machine learning is it also leverages psychology, linguistics, neurology, philosophy, imagery in a way into its analysis. So they actually deconstruct the rules, certain rules of psychology, and then they translate it into an algorithm and apply it to a situation so that it can start to be more like human behavior. Same thing with linguistics, same thing with neurology and the way that the brain actually operates, philosophy, et cetera, et cetera. There are tons of arts, arts and sciences that have been broken down into algorithmic mechanisms that, when combined with others, to try come closer to emulating human behavior. A subset of machine learning is generative AI, okay, or Gen AI. That's the notorious ChatGPT is such an example. It's a type of AI that uses machine learning to create new content. It works by training models on models of existing content data lakes to identify patterns and then generate similar patterns based on a prompt.
Right. That's like what's it called? GPT or what?
Go ahead.
What's the
ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT, yes.
By OpenAI, the most famous of them all right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yes, it's exactly it. And basically, I don't know how many people on the call right now have actually used ChatGPT. And I have to tell you, I teach law school, and I've asked my students, how many of you, and they're all, in their mid-20s, early 20s, and 23-ish. And I've asked them, how many of you have used ChatGPT? And I would get like some less than half of their hands go up. It's a very interesting dynamic. I mean, lawyers and AI already have some issues and similar to the creative types like actors, writers, producers, things of that sort, but it's a little different for lawyers, but we share stuff in common. But anyway, so if you do use ChatGPT and if you do decide to play with it, ChatGPT 3 is free. So I would highly recommend that you kind of take a dive in if you haven't yet, just so you can see what it does. Ask it a question, ask it to do something for you, and see what it generates literally in a nanosecond.
Well, let me just ask the room with the virtual hand raised. At the bottom, you should see a raise hand. There should be reactions, then there should be raise hand and apps and whiteboards. But look at the raise hand. Raise your hand if you've used ChatGPT. I know that I'm almost positive. I was going to say Tracy Swedlow. I knew that was the first hand that was going to go up. Lil, you've used it as well. Could you let me ask you, the four of you, we'll start with Tracy. You could just turn on your mic and tell us how have you used ChatGPT?
Hi. I use it all the time. I use it to help me answer questions, potentially to smooth out a particular sentence that I was working on where I wasn't, I wasn't happy with it. Sometimes I will use it to give me some ideas. I've used it a little bit to do research on my musical.
So it's your dramaturg. ChatGPT is your dramaturg.
It is actually, it's very clever. But the thing is you always have to be the editor. You can't just cut and paste it because it always needs some smoothing out. It always needs your personal touch. So it's a fantastic solution generator, however, for specific practical things like when I'm planning my conference and I need to know exactly how much volume of coffee I need to produce for a certain amount of, several hundred people, it will answer me. So I use it for very practical reasons, and I use it for creative purposes too.
Oh, cool. Interesting. I knew your hand was going to go up. Terry Kirkwood, how have you used ChatGPT?
I have used it in my law practice for Dauna knows this, to respond to motions and to get ideas in terms of arguments that I should use. And what I found out the first time I used it was that I guess it's what they call hallucinations. And there have been attorneys who have gotten in very public trouble
Yes.
because it created an argument. And I was like, wow, why haven't I thought of this before? And when I went further, because I agree with Tracy, you have to edit it and you have to look into it. It made an argument, but the argument it was making was nowhere to be found in the authority that it cited. At least in my case, it cited real authority, but it also will make up authority. So it will make up cases.
I've heard of some of those situations with lawyers.
Yeah, it's
arguing a case based on ChatGPT, and the case didn't exist.
And I mean, but it's I won't get into that, but yeah, it's just basic. You just don't cut and paste and submit it. You have to definitely look into it and make sure that it is accurate. So
this comes back to what I call harnessing the beast. AI, I think, is a beast that needs to be harnessed.
Yeah,
Very well put. Yeah.
Little, how have you used it?
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Great. So I use it to answer some questions. Like if I am not satisfied with the answer I get from Google, although Google's starting to use more AI for their basic search field. I use it for screenwriting prompts, but not to write my screenplay because I know it needs improvement, but it'll just give me like a general starting point. And from there, I add in my own writing. And then I also asked it to write a bio about me, like as a producer, and it came up with all kinds of incorrect information. Like I graduated from the University of Southern California in film studies and gave me all these fake credits. So I'm not sure where that came from.
I think George Santos uses that. That must be how he comes up with his hallucinations. So these are all good uses of AI with some warning signs in there. We have to be careful about it. We're going to eventually, with you, Dauna, we're going to talk about how it was not used in a positive way, and why there were people fighting based on issues dealing with AI. So do you have more slides though, right?
Yeah, I do. And I also actually covered that too, but just to cover two more that are important. There's something called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, and this is where the AI can perform any task a human can with the same capabilities. And you heard the whole thing about Sam Altman getting fired and now he's back and all this other kind of stuff. The reason why, supposedly, it's not been verified yet, but the reason why is because of the fact that he knew that they had reached, OpenAI had reached the stage of creating AGI. And AGI is at the level at which everyone is concerned. Everyone's concerned because it is too close to being human that at that point, ethically and a number of other, from a defense perspective, a whole mess of perspectives, one needs to worry about it. And the last stage, which supposedly has not been hit, and most in the industry feel it won't be hit for a while, is something called artificial superintelligence, which is where it surpasses human beings in their capacity. The reason why AGI is a concern, because if it really has been hit by OpenAI, and then you take the writer's strike into consideration in particular, then it means that now it's at a stage where, as all the examples that were given just a few minutes ago, where you don't have to proof it. I mean, like it is already, it's going to be able to be so clever and so nuanced in how it writes that it will be able to write as well as a seasoned writer could. And so technically we're there, supposedly.
we're all hoping that we're never going to actually get there in
Yeah.
terms of aesthetics. I mean, we still cling to the idea that there's an aesthetic and there's an artistry that may not be imitatable by AGI. I don't know. I hate to think that it could be. I think that's what we're all worried about.
Yeah, I agree with you. Bob, I don't wanna, I know you have a set of questions. I don't wanna mess with that flow. I have how many slides are we've got about 5 or 6 more slides. Do you want me to run through them real quickly and then we can go back
Sure.
to questions, or?
Sure, we can go.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then you know what? That's a good idea. We'll go to the room for questions, and then we'll try to tie some threads together because we really haven't
Okay.
quite talked about the ramifications of the strike settlement.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay.
All right. So, and actually, I do have slides that touch on that lightly.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, so just to finish this, these are the traditional intellectual property and related protections in the entertainment business. And oops, sorry. And so basically all of these protect, this is how we normally protect humans, right? From getting their stuff stolen or misused. And the question as to whether or not this is extendable to machines at this stage hasn't been established. And so the one of the concerns behind the strike was to determine how you're going to protect humans if since the lines haven't been drawn in a bright way or right between humans and machines around copyright, trademark, right of publicity, right of privacy, all of those things had to be deconstructed and put back together under the writer's script in the settlement agreements. Basically, this was what they were fighting over. Okay, so while we talk about as if they're fighting over AI, they're also really drawing these bright lines as to whether who owns something written by AI or a photograph taken by AI, who owns someone's image that actually has been manipulated by AI, you know, or an individual's right to not be manipulated by AI.
That was one of the
Yeah.
most easily disputed aspects of the strike for many of us. Basically, studios were saying that they could own the AI generated image of a person in perpetuity. That
Right.
basically an actor would come in for a day, do a day's worth of shooting, and then the studio would own those images forever.
Right.
I think in perpetuity was the.
Yes, no, you're right. Yeah.
That was the thing that was just damnable. I mean, it's like, really?
Exactly. And not only that, though, then they could also take stuff that they're found in those data lakes and be able to manipulate that as well, just like anybody else could. That was another position, you know. So in other words, Taylor Swift has got a zillion images in on Google, right? And so the argument could be was that if they could go into Google's data lake and be able to put together a Taylor Swift that actually walked and talked and sounded, you know, and maybe manipulate her in certain ways, did Taylor have to be compensated for that? Or was it just Google that had to be compensated for that because it was being licensed from Google?
Well, one would like to believe that a human being owns the rights to their image.
Yes.
You know, in some level, in some way,
Yeah.
And would be compensated for in 10 years suddenly finding themselves starring in a TV commercial or a Netflix series and not getting paid for it. I mean, I don't know how anybody argued against that, but I guess they did.
They did and lost.
Yeah.
So yeah. So this is actually Scott Galloway had a couple of slides that were really great and or images that were really great. He took them took the data from other places, and I just thought I'd throw them up here real quick. I'm giving him credit. I did not create this slide. But
so I'm not surprised to learn that I prefer streaming to TikTok. That doesn't like astonish me at all.
Yeah, you can go down a TikTok rabbit hole if you get lost, unfortunately, though. But yes, there are.
And in the declining interest in TikTok is exactly what we've been told it was. We were told that TikTok is the very young medium, a social media source for people to use when you're trying to reach young people, young audiences, which is very important for us. I mean, we can't ignore TikTok. We just have to understand that the audience that we're gonna reach in TikTok is going to be Gen Z and possibly younger.
Right.
Is there anything younger than Gen Z? Where are we now?
Oh yeah, they're at Gen A.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Gen A guys are. I don't know what age they are. Maybe somebody else on the call does, but they're talking about Gen A now.
But it's interesting. There's such a clear 66% Gen Z, 53% millennials, 31% Gen X, and 18% boomers in terms of interest in and probably usage of TikTok.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about TikTok is that, as well as Instagram and the like, is that the producer of the content is the individual. It is not the studio necessarily, right? And so there's another pre-strike concern, which is that the studios and the streamers are competing now against the individual for content and places to actually advertise. Advertisers are now looking to TikTok, Insta, influencers for.
But I have a legal question for you that's a little bit off topic. Well, it's actually on this topic. Facebook, I've heard, and I don't know if it's still true, used to have disclaimers saying that any content posted on their social media platform is owned by them. Is that still true? So they own our content if we post on Facebook.
Yeah, all of them. Hang on one second. Going back to this slide, all of these guys, Google, Bard. When you do your search, you put in your search, they now own that. They know some things about you, who you are, your age, what you've been searching the web for, things of that sort, and they own it. Those I accept buttons give them all the right to do all this stuff. You open Siri and Alexa in your home, I'm gonna tell you right now, they are tracking your ambient sound in your home nonstop, 24/7. And there are ways to opt out, but it's not easy. And so you and your partner making love is part of what they own now. If they hear it.
This is
not to
just
be
getting
blunt, but it's true.
This is a rabbit hole that I just the creepiest rabbit hole you could go down. This is amazing.
Yeah. Those I accept buttons.
So let me ask you, are there any legal precedents that have been set in terms of Facebook trying to prevent somebody from using a photograph that they posted on their website, and Facebook saying that they can't use their photograph? I mean, how does Facebook know? It's got like 6 billion people, but technically they're saying they own the content, but have they ever tried to stop anybody from using their own content?
That I don't know. I'm not versed in that. But the thing is that Facebook is taking claim to ownership of the copy that you put there. You own the original. So you've given them rights to the derivative work of your image, basically. Let us call it derivative work.
Oh, this is so disturbing. All right. It's much more disturbing than I was planning.
Yeah. But that's the price you pay for the free use of Facebook. Facebook, to be part of their ecosystem does have a price, and that's it. And then in turn, Facebook will then license those data lakes to others like ChatGPT so that they can become smarter, because the bigger the data lake, the more intelligence they can garner, right?
How do they explain if you quote something on your platform, on your Facebook platform or any social media platform, or if you take something that you've written and you share it, like I've written a song, I put my song lyric on Facebook. Do I own my song lyric anymore?
You owned it, yeah, definitely. But you've given Facebook a license to be able to replicate it and share it with your friends.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's
you do own it. You're the owner of it, but Facebook also has a legitimate license to replicate it, to share it. Mainly at your instruction, but depending upon what you put up, it could actually, quite frankly, that instruction under that I accept button is pretty broad. So when you decide to share it with your friends, and then strangers can look at it too and like it, and all this other kind of stuff. It's not just your
okay.
immediate circle.
Okay, so it doesn't prohibit us from using our own work or our own image. Okay.
No.
That's been troubling me for years because people keep talking about Facebook owns your whatever you post. It's like, really? They own it?
Oh, I see what you're saying. No. They have a license to use whatever you post. You're the original owner. You are the owner. They have a derivative, what is called derivative work of your.
Okay, so that makes me feel much better. Thank you.
So, but it's very difficult to get Facebook to stop. All right. So, and then one other thing that Scott had done is he had shown this shows how much less network and cable as far as hours or weeks given versus streaming. So a staff writer, if they're working at a network, is going to get 29 hours as opposed to 20 hours if they're working at Netflix. So it's so this goes back to what we were saying earlier. Those numbers are significant. And to Tracy's point, folks have been feeling this pinch for a long time. So this is my last Scott Galloway quote, but basically adjusted for inflation, the median writer-producer salary has declined 23% in the last decade, and much of this is due to streaming. So, all right. So this is the Writers Guild summation. Do you want me to do this or no?
Sure. Is this what was?
Yes.
What the demands were?
This is what they got.
This is what they got. Okay, good.
Yeah, and this is coming from them. I actually went to the Writers Guild website, and this is how they summarized it. So let me just to make it less complicated. AI can't write or rewrite literary material. AI generated material will not be considered source material under the MBA, which is the I'm blanking on the acronym, but it's the general contract that everyone signs, the writers sign, meaning that AI generated material can't be used to undermine a writer's credit or separated rights. Okay, so
they won that one.
They won that one. They won all four of these
right.
points. Writer can choose to use AI when performing writing services, as we have heard on this call, people are already doing that. If the company consents and provided that the writer follows applicable company policies, because some companies are anti-AI, but the company cannot require the writer to use AI when performing writing services, because if they force you to use AI, then that means that you're doing it quicker, and your creativity is now being removed, so you're getting paid less, and the work isn't actually really yours unless you want it. You want to use AI, you can use AI as long as the company allows it, but the company can't force you to use AI. If that makes sense.
Yeah, because basically you're suggesting that they do that as a tactic to cut work hours so that they don't have to pay as much.
Right.
Okay.
The company must disclose to the writer if any materials given to the writer have been generated by AI or incorporate AI generated material. So, if the writer is given materials that actually are AI generated, the company has to tell them, we want you to improve, to edit this script. They have to say, we got it from ChatGPT, you know what I mean? They can't just hand it to them, a person, and expect the person to work on it without that kind of disclosure.
Wouldn't it be a good idea to have that particular relationship be specified and have its own contract? If there's a difference between somebody being given a script to rewrite and being given ChatGPT to rewrite. It just seems like it's two different things that are involved there.
Mhm.
As a writer, I mean, if I were handed that, if you're being given somebody's script, and somebody actually put the creativity and hard work and labor into it, I would approach the task differently than I would if I were handed a GPT chat script and told to make this playable.
I think that's all. I think your point is the reason for the bullet, actually, and also because your tagline is now going to be associated with it, right? If you're, depending upon your contract, you might be a ghostwriter, but if you're getting, writing credit, you really should know where the original came from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm assuming if you're a ghostwriter, it means you're less concerned about this, but still, that's the result. And then the last key thing was that the WGA reserves the right to assert the exploitation of writers' materials to train AI is prohibited by NBA or other law. So in other words, if they're finding out that writers' materials are used to train AI, that the WGA has the right to assert this exploitation as being problematic.
Train GI seems like a very nice way of putting it. Basically, they're feeding your work to the beast.
Yes, exactly. So that they can mimic it in the future. Yeah. And therefore maybe not need you, because your style will be able to be replicated by the
oh, God forbid. All right.
So that's the writer's summation, and this is the actor's summation. Basically, the short of it and the long of it is that the actors got the right for consent and compensation. That's just it in a nutshell. I mean, the actors really, in many ways, are more vulnerable than the writers. But one could argue otherwise, and that they're both equally vulnerable. It's not a contest. I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, so employment-based, so the actors guilds, what they said is employment-based digital replicas are created during a performer's employment with their physical participation and used to portray the performer in scenes they didn't actually shoot. So we're talking about replicas now, right? So under those, and they have certain scenarios that they detail further, which I didn't put here. They did a beautiful PDF that I'll be glad to share with folks if they want more detail. But the point is under this scenario, an employment-based digital replica can't be done without the consent of the actor, and the actor has to be compensated. That's the punchline.
Okay.
The next type of replication is an independently created digital replica, and that's a digital replica created using existing materials used to portray the performer in scenes they didn't actually shoot. So this is again where you go into the Taylor Swift example I gave earlier. You go into the data lake, you find enough Taylor Swift that you can actually create a feasible replica of her, and then and claim that she was in your movie when she wasn't. And again, if you're going to do that, you need her consent, and then you have to pay her for it.
Okay.
Generative AI replica is where all right, so they are able to where you're able to simulate a performer's voice, facial expressions, and movements to create entirely new content. So the person didn't even say this stuff, move this way. All of a sudden you have like, I don't know, you have I don't know, Dolly Parton, doing rap or something, and I'm just trying to be extreme, but you know what I mean? And she's, doing all these lewd gestures, because the algorithms can make her do that. The generative AI can make her do that. You can't actually show it without her consent, and she has to be compensated.
So that's basically how they solved all of this. It's just they're saying you have to ask for consent and you have to give people compensation.
Yep.
Which seems like the bare minimum of human value here.
Yes, you're right. But how many days do they have to strike for it? I mean, that's just, that's
140,
crazy part.
140, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the crazy part. You know what I mean? You're absolutely right. You know, baseline human decency, background actor, digital replica, same thing, background actor's voice or likeness made with the actor physically present for scenes that didn't actually film. I think you brought this up as an example earlier in today's conversation. So, and like I said, I'll be glad, along with these slides, I'll be glad to share them with with everyone here.
Okay. And by the way, I just want to another shout out to Amy Stoller. She's a dialect designer, so she's very sensitive to the voice, to an actor's voice. So I'm sure she would. I'm sure she would like to see something a little bit more stricter than what this is. But at least, Amy, they're asking for permission and compensating somebody for the use of their voice.
Yeah, so, and if they say no, they say no.
Was that Amy?
I said amen. It was
amen.
the best deal they could get. So, you know, I'll vote, I'll ratify, because there we weren't going to get anything better.
Yeah.
Mind
consent and compensation.
Which are key points, you know.
It's also common sense. I
yes.
mean, let's just get down to it. It's just common sense.
And it wasn't there earlier this year. Voice and likeness, this FYI, these summations here, I took them from the PDF that was created, but the reality is voice, likeness, physical, all of these are found in all variants of this. It's just that the PDF did a summation that was not always consistent. And then lastly, this just happened in Southern California early, about 10 days ago. This gentleman sued Meta for basically using the saying that all of his works that were finding their way into Meta's data lake were actually infringements of his work. And but he didn't have good attorneys. He didn't have attorneys that were strong enough. Let me put it to you that way. It's kind of like the reason why OJ got off, right? Is this sort of like OJ, the prosecution was not strong enough, and OJ's lawyers were better. So anyway, but long story short, the claims that were made by the plaintiff was the judge said were nonsensical, and that the argument of using the data lake with renditions of his cadre's work in there did not violate copyright law, except in one instance, and I think it's based upon what I've read. I think it could easily be that the plaintiffs just did not make a strong case, as opposed to the plaintiffs being incorrect.
Yeah, there'll be more cases.
Yeah, yeah. No, you know, the law firm that went up against them is that represented Meta is a digital darling. So
okay, so let's give the screen back, and so we can bring people on and we can have them ask questions.
Okay.
Unshare the screen. There you go. There we are.
Sorry.
So
oh wow, we got a lot of messages.
Ross, did you notice if there are any questions in here that while we've been doing this that haven't been addressed?
It's Jay. Ross is gone. I'm having a hard time navigating his computer. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's see. Well, people use the hand raise if you can, or you know what? You could just turn on your mic and ask a question if you don't know how to do the hand raise. So there was a lot of information, guys. You sure you don't have any questions? Oh my God. John Ewing, yes.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question. In my opinion, in regards to the arts, film and theater, I would rather writers not be allowed to use AI whatsoever, because I feel like if once you let a little bit of it in the door, well, now the competition is technically competing against a computer. And if the person that's using AI is very successful, when another writer gets writer's block or something, are they going to feel like, well, I have to do this to compete? And then it's just going to pull it in the door further and further. So my original thought with AI was, I just felt like the arts should just reject it 100%, because if anybody uses a little bit, then it's just going to eventually just come pouring through, just like a hurricane. So I just love.
Okay, Dauna, what's the legal position on that?
Freedom.
John, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know there's no legal precedent for it, but there's also no legal precedent that would support it. Basically, you're saying to not let new technology in the door.
I mean, not let it in the door, but like, man, if the writing is not even real, then I mean, eventually AI is going to just write something 100% original that's incredible. What's to stop that?
We're hoping that won't happen.
Right now, it's not at the incredible stage. If you throw anything in there, anybody with a good eye is usually like, I gotta rewrite this, but thank you for the first draft. It gives you a way to, like, if you're going through writer's block or if you're in a rush, but it's not generating anything competitive with a good writer.
Trace, John, historically what's happened is that every new technology has frightened the hell out of us. And whether it was radio or television or television competing with movies, and movies feeling like, oh my God, what am I going to do now that we should ban television because it's too much competition for us. We can't compete with that. Then there's computers, and there's cell phones. I've watched the world change through technology, and it always looks awful at the start, and ultimately it gets integrated into our culture and becomes a useful member of society. I don't know if AI will or not, but it's hard to come up with a reason to block it, given the history that we have with technology. Technology is it always wins. And the odd thing about it is that technology is the result of human thinking, the human brain. It starts with the human mind, and all of technology has evolved in one way or other from a basic human understanding and thought idea. So I don't know. I don't know if we can close the door on AI and say, no, you can't come in. I just don't know. Tracy, and then Teresa.
Hi, thanks so much for everything. I recently went to an AI film festival here in San Francisco, and I have to say that the results were mixed, but some of the pieces were really quite sophisticated, and they're generating actors. They're not using real people, and the scripts were generated through AI, the visuals, and there's a lot of freedom involved in what they were able to create. It's almost as if Dolly had access to these tools. The one thing they weren't necessarily able to reinvent were the voice actors, if they wanted dialogue. Was there anything in the final contract that says something about voice? I mean, as we know, Siri and Alexa are collecting our voice data, and you can recreate people's voices. So I know that's going to happen too. But was there anything in there to protect the voice actors?
I thought that was implied in all of it.
Mm-hmm. the actual regulation or the actual rules that came out of it are very repetitive around protecting voice. The summation didn't necessarily wasn't as consistent. As a lawyer, if I had done the summation, it would have been less pretty, because when you see it, it's very beautifully done. Less pretty and a lot wordier. Lawyers aren't good with summations, we're very specific. But so the person who did the summation that I copied and pasted from wasn't consistent with the word phraseology, but in the actual regs, yes, it was consistent. Voice actors were consistently protected in
Teresa,
all those categories.
Teresa, did you want to add something?
Yes, the question I have is, in our area, we work a lot with indigenous groups, people in different parts of the world. And I just still question to what extent the data lakes or the databases being used are broad enough to cover people groups that typically you wouldn't normally have pulled in, as to whether it's still more Western focused. And I mean, that's kind of what was just spoken to, this whole issue of the voice and just the imagery. And I know you mentioned that AI also is bringing in linguistics and anthropology and so forth. But my concern, and I think the value still for normal human beings, is that contextualization for other cultures is still going to be the last that it perfects well. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, what is happening are that entities are licensing data lakes from others, right? So that if in the Philippines, there's a data lake there that actually would be, if brought into, an English version, would enhance it, then you can license it and make money that way. So there's all these like sub markets around data lake licensing that actually is coming into play. But you're absolutely right, because these AI machines have to learn how to integrate even, right? Because you can't say, oh, it's, linguistically, it's not one for one, right? It's actually, and the nuances that go between the two are completely lost, right? And so it's going to take a bit of time.
Thanks.
Good point. Very good point.
Tracy, did you have anything more to say, or is your hand still raised from before? Because I'm gonna wrap up. For at least for YouTube, I'll wrap up.
No, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Go ahead.
So Dauna, thank you for all of this mind-blowing discussion.
My pleasure.
I hope that my viewers out there in YouTube will appreciate all of this information and give you a little bit more of an understanding of why there was a strike and what has happened because of the strike, and also make you think a little bit about where we're going in terms of the use of this new technology. Nothing's solved here. I mean, what's solved is that actors and writers are back to work. But in terms of our legal ruling over the technology, the sort of, what's the word, wrangling of the technology, we don't really know where we're going. We have some thoughts about it, but I think it's things we need to be aware of and things that we need to think about, and we'll see where we're going in the future. So Dauna, thank you so much for the conversation. I appreciate it. If you out in YouTube land or podcast land are catching us randomly and didn't know us before, I hope you'll join us again. We have interesting conversations every Friday. They all touch on entertainment and the arts, a little bit focus on theater usually, but today's conversation really wasn't a theater conversation, because oddly enough, theater managed to stay out of this particular battle. Not that it won't eventually be part of it, but I think it will be. So if you want to be part of the room, email me. My email address is trunltd@aol.com, trunltd@aol.com. I will put you on the list and I'll invite you every week and you'll come meet also all sorts of interesting people with all sorts of interesting things to talk about. We also do this as a community service and we are glad to do that. And we're happy to invite people in to, and be part of the community, whether they can pay or not. We call it pay what you can. If you can pay, we'd love that. So, and if you want to support us, if you want to give us a little end of year support, this is like December. So this is the time when you might want to think about tax deductible donations for the year. You can donate to us at truedonate.com, trudonate.com. And you can join a great amount of support that we're getting at the end of the year, including a big grant that we got from the New York State Council on the Arts. So I think what we're doing is worth doing, and I think we're going to keep on doing it. And with your help and your support, it'll make it a little easier to keep doing it. Join us again. And again, thank you, Dauna, and thank you everybody in the room. Thank you, the True community.
Thank you, Bob. I really had a good time.
Oh, good.